Hey guys, I just wanted to do a really quick video, well, as quick as I can here, just sort of a post-release comments. The first thing I want to say was just thank you, all you guys that are supporting the channel. It's really awesome. Thank you for the subscribes and the likes, and any more of those that we can do really helps the channel grow. I just want this to get out, so I just want people to see it. So as much as you guys can share and like and stuff and anything like that would be super appreciated. And of course, thank you so much for your support thus far. I'm just going to kind of go part by part and break this down, my thought process to you as I went through this. So one of the things I was really critical of in the sequel trilogy was the lack of explanation for things like the First Order, how they came about, what was going on with the New Republic. Like there was basically no New Republic scenes. All of a sudden, they're just getting blown up, and I thought that was not good writing. I thought as watching the film, going like, where did these guys come from? So all of a sudden, now the Empire's back. So in the opening crawl, I wanted to sort of establish right away, okay, so what's the timeline? We're 20 years later. What's been going on? Well, the galaxy is under the rule of the New Republic, and there's peace. There's been a slow demilitarization, so I established right away that there are remnant factions of the Empire still. They're being dealt with by the New Republic throughout the galaxy. So I'm establishing right away that there's still a remnant empire, but they're spread. Their armada is spread out all over the place because they're dealing with what's left of it. And then they're also demilitarizing areas of the galaxy that they control. So right away you have this issue of, okay, so the New Republic is by choice weakening its defense, and you also know that there's a remnant empire that's trying to build itself up, from what it is. And then of course I also established that Luke is what he's been doing for the last 20 years, and he's been trying to find his missing pupil, which of course we realize very quickly is Ben Solo, and that he's now seeking answers from the Force. So he's waiting on the Force to kind of figure out what's going on, because he's having a tough time seeing Ben and where he may actually be. With part one, I just wanted to establish right away that Han and Leia were a couple still. They were in love still. They were not some sort of strange relationship where they were separated. Han did not regress back to being a smuggler, and Leia did not, sort of become sad, and I don't know. She was just almost kind of distant, I guess is the word. So I want to establish right away, and what are they doing? Well, they're trying to get their family back together. Their two kids, one of them, Ben, obviously is established right away. He's gone. We established that she is gone, assuming, that's their daughter. And that was kind of the whole purpose of part one, just to sort of establish that, and then establish who Commander Finn was, and the fact that he's actually the commanding officer that's trying to get Rey for the Empire, or sort of the whatever this remnant of the Empire is. And again, that ties in Finn with Rey. Instead of Finn being sort of somewhere over there, immediately they have a connection. It's not a positive one, but they have a connection, and I think it's just sort of story arc wise and tension wise between the two of them and all that type of thing. I think that just makes far more sense, and so that was kind of where I was coming from. And then we get to part two, and now we're establishing who Rey is in terms of her daily sort of existence. Obviously, she's a scavenger. I think in this case, this was a good job by Abrams, and the scene introducing her was really well put together. I really liked it. I trimmed it back a little bit. I didn't think it needed to be quite as long and as drawn out, but I did like it. And obviously, in this version, I don't. There's no BB-8. This isn't another story about finding another droid like they did in A New Hope. That's been done. So her conflict with the people in Nema and on Jakku has to do with this remnant empire is looking for them. Some of the locals have accused her of being a thief, and so the idea is that they've been told this by somebody. Maybe they're jealous of her. She does stand out. She's sort of the only normal girl that you see on the planet, really, at all. So they don't like her. And then, of course, we find out she can defend herself, which I was fine with that in the original movie. That was good too. She's a strong person, and that's okay. You can still write an arc with somebody who's a strong person. And then, of course, we cut to Octu right away. We see Luke right away. He's doing what he's doing. And, of course, the opening crawl established that he's sort of just stopped searching for Ben for a while. He's looking for answers from the Force. So, of course, he goes to Octu. That's the first Jedi Temple location. And he has this vision in the fire, and of course the fire is not the tree. Why would Yoda burn down the oldest Jedi temple? That doesn't make sense at all. I needed a fire. I needed him to see a vision in a fire. So, of course, I had Yoda tell him to make one. And you kind of get the impression that Yoda may have been responsible in part for his vision, because he kind of tells him to do that. And then his vision is, of course, Vader's helmet in flames, which gives us is sort of a foreshadow of what's coming later. And he hears Ben's voice. He's trying to make sense of what's going on, and he's trying to find clues to where his nephew is. And he's annoyed because Yoda is telling him to wait for answers from the Force and be patient. And also, I thought it was really important right away, right off the hop, early in this film, to acknowledge the conflict that, okay, so Anakin balances the Force, kills the Emperor, but now all of a sudden we've got a new threat. And Yoda just basically says the truth, which is a prophecy once fulfilled is fulfilled now. And we knew that some other threat could still come. It didn't make all of a sudden make everything go away forever. And that just sort of just takes care of the lore, I think, for me, and I hope for you guys as well, that just sort of took care of the lore quickly instead of sort of dragging it out and and sort of lacking cohesion. And so in part 3, again, just furthering sort of the New Republic and giving you some insight. So I have Chancellor Villicum. Hard to do the footage of that to make it look decent, because of course there is no Star Wars footage of him, live action footage of him. So forgive me for that. But again, the story, his fleet admiral is Admiral Pride, and Pride's asking for more ships for the defense of the capital. And Villicum is saying, well, I'll give you this one last time, but then the Starfleet budget is going to be considered maximized, which again, sort of just establishing this idea that the New Republic is not a war republic, they're a peace republic, and they don't feel the need to have this level of defense. And then, of course, we have Han and Leia have now arrived on Jakku and are attempting to get Rey out of there, and to Han's surprise and Leia's surprise, that of course there's stormtroopers after her, and they didn't expect that at all, because in their mind, Leia's mind, in particular as a general, that there's just not much of that around anymore. But anyway, so I redid the scene with Finn and Rey and made it Han instead. And again, I think that's just such a good way of them having sort of their first meeting. It's exciting. It's tension filled, and it just made sense that the Falcon takes off out of Jakku with Han at the helm, not Rey. Like, she's never flown this before, but she does show some mechanical acumen and does help Han out, and he's impressed by that. And I also thought it was kind of neat to see Leia on the gunner. I thought that was kind of cool. We see her in the sequel trilogy as a general, but we don't really see her actively fighting. So I just thought that was kind of a neat thing. Like, she's very capable, she's very strong, she knows what she's doing. And then, of course, having 3PO there, and of course Han, telling her to get him out of there because he's talking and stuff. I just kind of wanted to bring sort of that kind of old style. But again, Han and Leia have a tight relationship that's established. 3PO's lives with them, whatever, he's with them, that's established. Rey is their daughter, that's established. She's got attributes from both of them, clearly. And I just thought that, just tying that whole thing together just made a lot of sense. So then in part four, we see, we go back to Octu, we see Luke's, the Jedi library, and you see him kind of looking at the books and thinking and dwelling, and then you get a little glimpse into sort of how he's been tormenting himself about his nephew, that he did not sense that, the night that he was taken, and he's just still so torn about it. He gets R2 to show him this video of Ben as a kid when he was training him, and he's obviously asking to see it again, and R2's like, no, stop tormenting yourself, but he makes him do it anyway. So you just get kind of a glimpse into what's going through Luke's spirit, his soul, what he's thinking, because he's just tormenting himself about his nephew. So that's his priority. You get immediately his motivation and why he's doing the things that he's doing. Then we switch to Kuat, and this is where I want to establish again, like, how does this remnant, or how does an empire just sort of exist again? And I thought, again, they did such a terrible job in TFA of establishing why this First Order even existed. And again, so here we are at Kuat, which at one time in canon was a Empire drive yard where they built ships and stuff like that. So I have a New Republic representative talking to this shadowy figure representing the Empire, pretty self-explanatory. And they're talking about how they're building ships secretly behind General Leia and the New Republic's back on Kuwait, and how she's making sure that no communications are getting through, and that the New Republic is unaware that this is going on. Now, they're not building thousands of ships, but they're building a reasonable sort of moderate fleet, something that could handle, you know, a major battle, but wouldn't be something that you could just take over the whole galaxy with in one shot. So again, establish why it's there, make it realistic. And then, of course, I've established at this point the manipulation that's been going on, and that there's this shadowy figure that's a very big part of that manipulation in rebuilding the Empire, rather than just, again, having the Empire just sort of pop out of nowhere. Look, there's an Empire again. And you know, I felt watching TFA, I was like, man, I need an explanation for this. Like, this is not enough. And so already now in the first few parts, I've established it with the opening crawl. I've established it with the attitude of the New Republic, and I've established it with Hux and Finn, and that there's still people behind the scenes working on this. And then now I've established it with the Kuwait Drive Yards. So you get a sense that there's actually something building, rather than this just exists, it's here now, you know, they fly now. And then in part 5, this is a really big scene as well, because I know it doesn't look the best, but I really did try my best to get the emotional response from Han and Leia explaining to Rey why they had to leave her there, and why, you know, and what happened with Ben, and that there were bounty hunters being paid by what was left of the Empire to round up a lot of the officials and their kids. And so they explained to her why they had to do what they had to do. And they have this big emotional scene, and the hugging, and this is my parents, my name's Rey Solo now. And the only thing I didn't get into, and I'm going to see how I'm going to do it in 8, is who they left her with. I kind of did. That is one hole I did leave in this, looking back, that I'm kind of disappointed I didn't address. Was, so what, they just dropped a 2-year-old off on a, desert planet by herself, which of course they did not. But again, that isn't the hugest issue, but I did wish I would have dealt with that. But anyway, I hope I got some emotion out of you guys that have watched the scene, just, establishing that they are her parents, and now they have this relationship. And then of course I get into Finn, and Finn, I didn't like in the TFA that he's a stormtrooper for however many years, and then all of a sudden he sees them killing somebody, and now he's just, I can't do this anymore. I found that really weird. It didn't feel like it made a whole lot of sense to me. Like, he knows that's what they do. Like, this is what they do. So why are you so upset now all of a sudden? You know what I mean? It didn't really give a good explanation as to why he defected. And of course, my version, he's fails his mission. He fails his assignment. Rey gets away, and so now he's actually lost his post. Not only that, and they've thrown him in the Imperial jail there while they decide what they're going to do with him. And I did that also to establish, like, this Empire is not friendly. They're not fun, even to their own guys. They're a get the job done group of people. So you establish that they're capable. You establish the tension. They're not some silly, outfit. They know what they're doing. And then I wanted to obviously bring Phasma in and stuff like that as well. So there's no, I got rid of the blood on the helmet thing and all that stuff. I didn't feel like any of that made any sense. I thought it was just a lot of, again, it was a cool visual, but it wasn't a story thing. Like, it wasn't very Star Wars. We don't see stormtroopers with bloody hands. Like, it's just kind of weird. Okay, so now in part 6 we go into, after Han and Leia experience the stormtroopers and stuff, they decided they better go talk to Luke, and they bring Rey to Luke as well to see what they should do with her, and maybe Luke should train her, whatever. So they get there, and there's some expository dialogue after she's introduced to Luke, and no, she doesn't give him any lightsaber, and he doesn't throw any lightsaber. He smiles. He's happy to see her. This is his niece. He tells her how special she is. They hug it out. Like, there's a lot of just nice, touching family moments I was trying to establish, and establish that Luke is not a negative person in this. He's still positive. He has his sadness over what's happened, but he's not just, against the Jedi and I don't care anymore and throw the lightsaber and all that stupid stuff. He's just there, and he's trying to figure out what to do, and he gets kind of an uplifting thing because he's been worrying about Ben this whole time, and all of a sudden Ben's little sister is there, his niece, and so he gets kind of a good vibe from that. And again, more smiles. They have their talk. We get a scene with Han, Luke, and Leia together, and they're discussing what's going on with this attack on Han, so they're concerned. You see a reunited scene with 3PO and R2, and I tried to get some dialogue in there that was kind of cutesy, kind of like what they normally would do. And then we establish at the end of the scene that Luke's going to train Rey. So, and again, this is something I thought needed to be done. Like I was really disappointed in TFA when Rey was doing, the first one was when she did the Jedi mind trick without even knowing how would she even know what that is? Like it was just. And then she duels Kylo, and she knows what she's doing, and she's never even held it wasn't good. It was like a superhero versus, I don't know. It lacked all the depth that I was hoping that there would be. So I was kind of like, Luke training her needed to be in 7, not 8. Like that needed to happen right away because she's just way too strong. And again, she's strong in mind too, but she's also has her weaknesses and she also has her failures. But she needed to have some sort of training, and in my version, she's actually there for several weeks. There's a lot of off-camera stuff that she's there because they're there. Like I said, they're there for several weeks. They're not just there for a couple days or a day or 3 lessons. Like they're there for a while. So, and that was another thing I thought about with this writing was that I thought too much happens too quickly in the sequels. Just way too fast. Like they're going planet to planet to planet. There's no sense of time. I wanted to establish that, and going back to the parentage reveal with Rey, that was part of that too. So they're flying through hyperspace, but then there's this sort of drawn out scene that's taking place. So I wanted to kind of get that feeling again that you had in the original Star Wars movies, where there's a sense of time. There's a sense that it takes time to fly through space. Like you don't go from planet to planet in an hour, and you certainly wouldn't be able to see a planet exploding across the galaxy from your living room, like they did with the Starkiller base thing too. Which again was another thing. Why would all of a sudden there's a new empire and they have an entire planet that can destroy planets? It's so unexplained. And anyways, I don't want to go too much into that, but yeah, so that's part 6. Okay, so in part 7 here, now we get into the just further delving into the revived empire. And so now this single lone old style Star Destroyer that Hux is on, and there's new style stormtroopers on it. Again, I'm trying to merge all the eras of the 9 movies together throughout this trilogy so that it really has an impactful ending and kind of brings back all those things. And so Hux of course says, they're gonna meet in Kuwait where they're building some ships, and then they're gonna merge with them. And he brings up the fact that they'll be old with the new, so there'll be some of these new Star Destroyers along with some of the old ones that are still left over. And so again, you're seeing the merging of forces behind the scenes with this reviving empire to give it some credibility, so that when it does appear and it does make its big move, you get a sense that they had that they built that off of something. It didn't just exist out of nowhere. And then, of course, we have Finn. He breaks out of the prison by himself, and the stormtrooper makes a mistake. He goes too close to the bars. And again, I just wanted to establish that Finn was capable. He's not some bleeding heart. Oh, look what we did. He's a capable guy. The reason he's defecting is because he's been mistreated by those that are above him. And he feels like this is unwarranted, and he doesn't want to be part of this stupidness. So again, it wasn't a feelings-based decision. It was a logic, optics-based decision, and he's just had enough of the nonsense. So then, of course, he puts the suit back on, the guy that he shot, and he made sure to shoot him in the leg so that it wouldn't be a big hole, in the chest or something like that. Then he goes to find BB-9, uses a code in his helmet because he knows the code to find him, finds him, takes out the droid that turns the alarm on, and then uses BB-9 to turn the alarm off. And right there, I'm just trying to establish that BB-9 is the new droid character of this trilogy. It's not BB-8. We have R2-D2. We don't need BB-8. Like, why would you? You're just making R2-D2's role diminish more. And I like the idea of BB-9 because it's an enemy droid, and so the possibilities going forward in the next movies and stuff, that the ways that they can use him, just like Finn does here, getting the alarm to turn off, is interesting. And his loyalty is to Commander Finn, and Commander Finn first, not the Empire first. so he's sort of, Finn's little sidekick going forward, right? Then we get into part 8, and there's, Han and Leia again having concerns over the timeline and how long they should be waiting with their knowledge that there's this potential threat. At the same time, they're like, well, but Rey's training, and what do we do? So they're sort of trying to figure out what to do. And then we see Rey's first sort of failure, and she's training, and she's climbing the cliff, much like she would climb the Star Destroyer when she's introduced, and she falls into the water, and then Luke tells her, you're good, but you're not that good. And that was kind of me putting a little, giving a little shot to the actual films, in the sense that she's just so able and just sort of never struggles. And then of course she makes it up the cliff, and then Luke says, well, it took you the night. So then we know that she fell multiple times. So right away she's not perfect, and she's got struggles. And then she makes it to the top, and then Luke starts introducing her to the Force, gives a different description than Yoda, but the same in a lot of ways too. I tried to make it sort of in his own words rather than sort of just rehearsing or just sort of repeating something maybe that Obi-Wan or Yoda had told him. And then that scene that's actually in The Last Jedi where he tickles her fingers and stuff with the leaf was actually really good. I like that. I like that they did that. That was actually a good scene. I didn't like that Luke was, it was all about Luke being a grump about it, but that was cool. So, incorporated, parts of that. And again, that was the only time really in the entire sequel trilogy where she actually failed to do something was when she was reaching out and didn't do it properly. And then we get this kind of vision, and the guy saying she's royalty. That is the guy that she was left with. And again, I didn't do enough to kind of give that answer to the audience, and that's, I think, a flaw in this. But again, she has this sort of vision of the Force, and then she's able to lift some of the small little pebbles, and it's a really big deal. Then Luke goes at her again, and then she sort of sees the darkness, and then she says, "Oh, you weren't there." And in the movies, I don't even remember what Luke says back, but it was really kind of ugh. In this one, it's, she sees the dark side, and he says, well, you're tempted. You're going to get tempted. I can't stop that. You got to deal with that yourself. And that's the Jedi way. Like, but I wanted to establish she is going to get tempted, and she is going to have issues. It's not going to be perfect, and she's not going to just automatically always be good necessarily, just like Luke had to sort of fight against the temptation to kill Vader in Jedi, right? He wasn't perfectly good all the time. But then at the end of the scene, Luke is teaching her and telling her, you can resist as I have. And again, he's positive. He's positive about the idea that you can resist the dark side like he did, and she can be, a good Jedi and all that stuff, rather than just this sort of grump who was reluctant to even train her. He's actually very, very motivated to. And I think that was a really important thing to do. And again, I think it's more emotional in that it's her uncle. And then she finds out about Ben, and we find out the details that, he was taken one night, and he didn't feel it in the Force, and how that has just been eating up at him. But he knows he's still alive. He can feel it. And so you sort of get the training going, and you get her weaknesses starting to show, her strengths starting to show. The one thing we're still kind of lacking with her is her motivation. That is going to get established before the end of this movie, but that's the one thing that is still not established. So we're seeing her kind of doing what she's been told to do by people, but not really sure why she's doing it at this point. Okay, and then in part 9, we the plot really starts to move along. Now we're getting past just sort of the character development side of it more, and we're getting into the plans that these guys have and stuff like that. So Finn is still in prison. Finn is broken out of prison, and we know that he needs to find Phasma because he knows what Hux's plan is. Well, now we get what Hux's plan is, which is he's going to send Phasma with a bunch of people, a bunch of troopers. They're going to pose as locals at the capital. Then they're going to attempt to blow up the council to destabilize the New Republic and maybe give them, an inroad for a set of time, whatever that may be. He finds out that Finn's gotten away. He's going to deal with that at some point. And then we get into, okay, so Fleet Admiral Pride was an infiltrator, and he's now gone to the shipyard to see if these dozen or so ships are ready, that these refurbished older ships. He gets there, and then we see Rose. Rose in canon is supposed to be like one of the best mechanics in the galaxy or something like that. So, or in the New Republic. So she's refurbished half of what he wanted. So 6 of them in a pretty quick order, right? In a matter of a couple of weeks or so. So that's her strength, and then Pride shows who he really is, and he basically bum rushes the area where the ships are with a platoon of troopers. Essentially steals the ships basically, but yes, and he does. I do kill off Rose, but Rose hasn't. It's not about killing her off. There's no role for her. I have too many characters already. I think there was too many people they were trying to focus on in the sequels, and they just kept adding more and more and more to the point where it just got so convoluted. I'm trying to keep the story within a solid amount of people, not 150 million people, and then I have to write all these sidebar stories. No, so it wasn't that I thought she was a bad character per se in the sequels. I think she had a lot of potential. I think her storyline was really dumb, but there just wasn't room for her. She fulfilled her role. She got these dreadnoughts to the enemy. So now we see that the enemy has a fleet that they've built on Kuwait. We're not sure how many ships, but several. We know that they've got a couple old Star Destroyers from the old times that they've been using. Hux has been using. And now we see they've got 6 more old-style dreadnoughts, old-style Republic dreadnoughts. So now we're starting to, again, see the building of this empire coming into fruition. And it's through people on the inside that have been posing as good people this entire time. And I think, again, this makes much, much, much more sense and establishes a proper story for this revived empire to even exist, rather than they just show up and they have everything, including a planet that blows up other planets. Like, I really liked being able to incorporate the little battle scene between the stormtroopers and the New Republic security droids. That was fun. The Mando gave us some of that. And then, of course, Pride takes the ships. And then at the very end of this part, we see Rey now training with Luke with her staff. So they're starting to get a glimpse into the beginning of sort of lightsaber training. And she loses. So I edited out, of course, the part where she actually beats Luke at it, because this is a noob. Like, she shouldn't be able to do that. And then, of course, she's just sort of practicing by herself at the end. But again, she's learning these things. She doesn't just automatically know them, and she's not perfect. And no, she cannot beat Luke at this point. Like, I don't know why that even happened in the movies. This is very weird. But anyways, so now at this point, Han and Leia have been on Octu for a few weeks, and they're getting to the point now where they're like, we do need to leave. Like, we can't wait any longer. And then, Rey has progressed, and she's still learning from Luke. Then we see Hux investigating what's going on with Finn, and he sees that he's broken out. He's summoned to speak to the Supreme Leader. So now we see a second scene where this sort of shadowy figure is who's sort of behind everything is the leader, essentially, of this revived empire or whatever it is. And he's upset. You failed your task. You didn't bring the girl in. You're not doing what I told you to do. Force chokes him. He's a serious dude, and tells him if he fails him again, he's done. And that's pretty much just, again, establishing who's who and what is what, and making the Empire show the Empire to be capable and very evil and a huge threat. It's nothing comical about it. Okay, and so then we move on. We go back to Octu, and Rey is deep in her training now. It's been going on for a long time, and she starts to sort of sense the Force tree. She goes over and looks at it and goes inside of it, reaches out for the texts, and then Luke comes and sees her. They have a conversation about the Jedi and how there are no other Jedi, and how he stopped training the kids once Ben was taken because he felt like he couldn't keep them safe, and so he sent them home. And so there hasn't been any Jedi, and no one's been raised sort of the first one in these 15 or so years. It's a little bit of an emotional scene too, because he says to her, they went back to their families, and then she kind of gets teary-eyed, like, man, I never got to see, be around my family. So that's kind of where I was going with there. Then he summons her to give her lightsaber, which of course is not Anakin's lightsaber, because that made absolutely no sense, and it was not explained. Maz just had it. No. So what I did instead, which makes far more sense, is Luke built a replica of his father's lightsaber, and then now he's giving it to Rey. I would say, I don't establish this, but you could make the argument that maybe he had originally made it to give to Ben, but now he's giving it to Rey. But either way, he gives her this replica, so it's symbolic, but it's not the actual one. And then she starts training with it, and after seeing her, and she cuts the rock off the hill and stuff, he tells her she's sloppy, that she needs more training. So rather than her, without ever having picked up a lightsaber, beating Kylo Ren in a fight, or beating Ben in a fight, she's not very good at the beginning of it. And he has to teach her. And so then you see her sort of training throughout the night, and then eventually she has a big moment where she can see the rock he's floating towards her, and she cuts it in half. But again, everything was built. It didn't just happen out of nowhere. So you get a sense that she's gaining these things through what she's doing with Luke, and he's training her. And then he sort of tells her about her grandfather and tells her about how he wasted so much of his life being Darth Vader and how it was bad, but he was also good in the end. And then he just sort of, warns her again about the dark side, and, you have to be careful. She's going through sort of a proper training, a fairly lengthy proper training. Now we start to get into the meat of the film and the meat of the conflict as Han and Leia say goodbye to Luke. C-3PO says bye to R2, and they're going to take Rey home now, and she's excited to see her new home. She's never been there, obviously. We show Phasma and her crew landing on Chandrilla at the capital in Hannah City to accomplish what we already know they're planning on doing, which is to blow up the council. And then we see Finn escaping off of that ship, and that's how he got away. Him and BB-9 get off the ship, get away from them, and they're running through the city, and they come to sort of a mechanic yard, and there's Chewie, and he's working on a ship. Chewie sees BB-9 and then comes down and threatens Finn, because obviously this is an Empire droid, and he knows that. BB-9 electrocutes him, kicks him across the yard, and then they kind of establish that, hey, because Finn tells him, this whole place is going to blow, we got to get out of here, and so Chewie kind of views him now as maybe not so much of a threat, and he just wants him to throw his weapon down, and then Chewie takes Finn and BB-9 to, wherever he lives, and then we see Han and Leia and Rey and 3PO coming in the Falcon, and then all of a sudden these Star Destroyers start coming out of hyperspace behind them, and this is what Hux was talking about, right? The old and the new, and we're gonna get them, and then they try and go after Han as he's trying to get onto Chandrilla. Han tells Rey to hurry up and man the gunners, and then she does, and she's good at it very quickly. So again, she is powerful, but we've also know that she's spent many days training now, so she's supposed to be better at things, and that's okay, right? Because you've got the established premise that she's been through what she needs to go through to be good at that. That still doesn't mean she's good at everything, but she's good at that. So they go after them, they can't get them. Finn witnesses the explosion, so now we know the planetary council has been demolished, and so this beautiful trip home for Han and Rey and Leia and everything, and is not what they thought it was going to be, because now we are officially in another Star War. Okay, so now this Star War has occurred. So we've now seen the revived Empire, or the sort of the remnant of the Empire coming together, putting all their ships, bringing their resources together. And then we cut to Poe, who's on the other side of the galaxy, basically, seeking out, these little pockets and stuff like that. And so, again, this sort of establishes this idea that a lot of the defense that they would have at their capital has been spread throughout the galaxy. And, of course, Hux says the same thing. This will be easy. Their defense is scattered across the galaxy. They've blown up the capital, and now all their ships are going to come together at Chandrilla to try and take the capital. Again, I think that's just a smarter way of doing it. Again, you establish stuff. Yes, the New Republic has a fleet defending their planet. The question is it going to be enough? Because so much of their other defenses are spread out throughout the galaxy, dealing with these pockets of infiltrators and spies that we established in the opening crawl. So we start to have this big thing, and then we see Han in the middle of the battle, and Leia go and get Chewie. They have this little spat, or Rey has this little thing about, you're going to trust a stormtrooper, and she still doesn't know that he's the one that was charged with bringing her in, and so there's that sort of backstory still there, and Leia kind of just says, I have a feeling about this guy, and that's kind of a foreshadowing for what's to come as well. And then Leia, of course, leaves and goes to, figure out what's going on, We have the space battle. She finds out that the whole council is basically dead. It's gone. I really like the troopers landing on the planet, and then having the World War II alarm on. It's sort of like threw that in there, kind of like as a ode to George Lucas, because he so much of what he did was inspired by war movies and stuff like that. So I thought that was kind of a neat little side thing. And then of course I'm splicing in clips from multiple different movies, from video game clips, from everything to sort of make this work. And Phasma's of course there and dealing with stuff, and then we get to see these ships. We see the Empire lose a couple too. It's not like it's like a pure just beat down, but then of course the revived remnant takes out the defense, and establishes a victory over the capital. The what's left leaves. There's walkers on the surface. We basically just get established that the capital has been taken now, and this remnant empire is essentially revived now, and they've taken control of the capital, which is better than just all of a sudden they're there. Then you get to part 14. So Han and Chewie and Rey are going to go, and Finn are going to go see Maz. So they got to get their stuff going. They got to get out of here. All of a sudden they hear Phasma, and Finn says, "I'm going to go take her out." Meanwhile, Rey and Chewie sneak around behind, and they get into one of the ATSTs, and so they take out this platoon. And then Finn fights Phasma, and in this version he loses. I think one of the things that was kind of weak was that Phasma was not as strong as she should have been. If she's sort of the highest stormtrooper there is, she needs to be pretty powerful, and so she eats his lunch, and then and that's fine. He's also flawed, right? So again, establishing the dominance of this new empire, both individually and otherwise. Then she makes it look as if she's left, but she's really still fairly close by, and she uses her apparatus on her suit to shoot a tracking beacon onto the Millennium Falcon before it flies away. Then we see Rey getting the Falcon ready. So again, the acumen with the machinery and all that stuff. So she's very Solo and very Skywalker at the same time. And they get out of there, but now we know, okay, well, wherever they're going, they're going to be tracked now. And you see Phasma pushing the button on the device. So we see just advantage after advantage after advantage from this revived empire taking place, and so they're really, really getting a firm hold on everything right now. And again, that's supposed to create that tension and make future scenes that much bigger of a deal. So then we go back to Hux and Phasma, and they're very confident, and you see a larger group of troopers. Things are starting to come together for them now. They've got more and more resources now. They've got plenty of ships. But again, everything was sort of built throughout time. This is the first time you hear the name Darth Iron uttered. So Hux establishes that there's a Darth Iron that's above him in rank, and he says he'll be very pleased that we've got this tracker. Now we're going to go, and we're going to go intercept them at Takodana, where Maz is, where they're going. So you might say, well, how would they know that? Because they haven't actually landed there. Well, they know that because they know that they're tracking the direction of where the ship is going. They know that's where they're going to head, essentially. Then we have this little talk with Finn and Han, and Han's trying to get to the bottom of what Finn was doing as a stormtrooper. Finn, lies to him and says he was at Kuwait, even though he knows Kuwait has been established as being sort of run by this empire, already. So that's what he uses is, oh, that's where I was. And Han's like, what are you talking about? And then Finn kind of reveals sort of to him that, things aren't as you think they are, and Kuwait was taken a long time ago. They land on Takodana. Rey has that moment where she's breathing the fresh air. It's a very beautiful place, blah, 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 blah. And then they have this really cute little father-daughter moment. And again, when I saw the original film, I watched this scene with the gun and stuff, the blaster that Han gives her. It felt very father-daughter to me, and so I was very surprised they didn't go that direction, and they went the she's a nobody direction, and then she's a Palpatine direction, because this was I changed the dialogue, obviously, and at the end of the scene, he says, "Oh, I'm proud of you," and she smiles very cutely, and so you have this moment where they sort of establish that they care about each other in a very sort of solo type way. He doesn't want to like outright say he loves her. He said, "Oh, I like you too," and "Oh, and Chewie, like," he just sort of changes the subject. So I wanted to kind of make this feel like a very sort of solo way of sort of we love each other, but and again, so they have that moment, and then they go. He tells Chewie a specific thing to fix on the Falcon, and I needed to have that because he isn't aware of the tracker. If Chewie's just looking around and dealing with stuff on the Falcon, he's going to find it obviously. So Han gives him a specific thing to go fix, so that he's doing that specific thing, so that this tracker doesn't get discovered yet. They go into Maz's thing. It's a cool scene. I like the way they set it up. All the aliens and stuff like that. They did a really good job, actually. And Maz, is knowledgeable. I kind of switched it up, so instead of saying, "Oh, she's been here for 1,000 years," "Oh, look at all these flags," and she knows all about all of them. So she's, it's a different way of establishing that she's extremely intelligent and been around for a long time. And then they get into sort of how this revived empire could have possibly existed, and then she brings up the idea that there's this gangster named Snoke who runs casinos and has a lot of money, and he's been making deals behind the scenes for ships and such. And again, so you're establishing how this empire revival happened. It's a multifaceted plan, and it's not one thing or another. There were people working on this from multiple areas, and so now we have Snoke Delta get ships, we have Ku at shipyards, we have Pride, who is an infiltrator. He stole 6 ships. We have what was left of the old Star Destroyers. So again, it's just a build up. It's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Then she mentions that this gangster, there's rumors he has powers in the Force, and of course we zoom in on Rey, going, "Oh, really? Is this what I'm here to do?" Because again, we still haven't totally established her motivation. She's still not fully understanding. And then we finally get to the truth of Finn. And so Finn is kind of something triggers him when he finds out that Rey is a Skywalker, and it immediately makes him want to confess that he was the stormtrooper that was charged with bringing her in. And so now you've got tension with them now, and you've got this background and connection between him and Rey. He establishes that Hux was taking orders from somebody else, that he didn't know but he didn't know who that person was. And then we immediately cut to the next scene, which was probably one of, if not my most favorite one I made, was this scene where you see Darth Vader as initially what would be perceived as a Force ghost. And this is the first scene you see Darth Iron or Ben in, and we're well into this at this point, well over an hour in, maybe even longer actually, hour and 20 or so before you really even see Ben. And you see him and how he's being manipulated into trying to emulate Darth Vader. I felt like in the TFA and in the actual films there, they didn't give me enough to make me believe that, like, first of all, where did you get Vader's helmet? Like did somebody sneak down to Endor while he was being cremated? Like, it makes no sense at all that he has his helmet, number one. And then number two, that he sort of just talks to the helmet. And then in The Rise of Skywalker, all of a sudden it's like, oh no, he's been hearing voices. Well, we never heard them. What? I wanted to take it one step further, do something far more impactful. So the scene opens, of course, with he senses the presence of his grandfather, and then all of a sudden you see this sort of flaming Force ghost of Vader. And so as the audience, you're going, what? Like, Sith do Force ghosts now? And then you see, oh no, wait a second, that's not what's happening. So you get to see Exegol, and you go down and you see this shadowy figure who's been talking to Corsella and who's been giving Hux orders and stuff. And you see him; he's actually force projecting Vader to Ben. And so then you see that this guy is the ultimate manipulator of Ben, and has made him believe that he's in contact with his grandfather when he isn't. And so that's what makes him kind of this cult of Vader type of character, rather than I hold his helmet and talk to it. Like I was kind of shocked they never thought to do something like this, but they didn't. So it is what it is. But it was a really fun scene to make, and again, it just really establishes Ben's situation. Was this the guy who took him and kidnapped him when he was a kid? Like, what's going on? But you get this, you get an understanding of why he's into this Vader stuff and why he's a dark side guy and what's been manipulating him the entire time. And I think that was extremely important to establish. Then we get to part 17, and now we get to hear again. This is where for me the story really starts to get good, is because we've established now this revived empire is there now and stuff, and now we're getting into the real fun stuff with the family and the connections and the people and everything else. And so, now we have Finn, revealing, his backstory, which is, I was a little kid. One of the other kids at the Jedi Temple was abducted. So now we've established for sure that Finn definitely is Force sensitive, 100%. But he's forgotten much of his training, and he was a little kid, and all of a sudden he was sent back home again. And so now you have this full circle sort of connection with Finn. So he's connected with Rey through being Stormtrooper, but he's also connected to Luke through being Force sensitive. And so her and Rey have this, it's tension filled, but it's also a much deeper connection than they had in the actual Force Awakens or in the actual films, because there's a connection, a family connection, as well as this sort of negative connection. I thought that just made a lot of sense to do. And Maz knows about it, and knows about the kids and stuff, and so this is a pretty important thing for her as well. Then Finn and Rey have sort of that little talk about his past and why he became a Stormtrooper. He was a stupid kid, and it was just a stupid decision, and he needed money, and so they have that kind of little exchange. And, you can tell that Finn likes her. You're not sure if she likes him. And again, we still haven't established really Rey's motivation yet. She's still confused. So then she senses something in the basement. She goes down. She has this vision. In my version of it, it's a little different, as she sees herself as a dark side user, and she, you do see the temple burning, and I didn't really focus at all on the Knights of Ren because there's no point. But she leaves the vision really scared. She talks to Maz. She tries to calm her down. It doesn't work. So the confused, not sure of her motivation, seeing this vision scares her enough that she goes running away. Maz senses she needs to leave her lightsaber there, so Rey throws it on the floor and again goes off running. Doesn't think she can handle what Luke's told her she needs to do. She's again super scared, and that's it. She goes off running. So then we get into part 18, and now this is sort of they've tracked the Falcon, and now this is Darth Iron arriving with a fleet, a smaller gunships and stuff like that. Rey starts using the blaster for the first time, starting to figure that out. We have Maz, encouraging Finn to use the lightsaber, and now when he does it, there's an actual established background, so you're kind of like, oh, this is kind of cool. Like he's actually, he's a Force sensitive guy who never really was trained, but here he is with the lightsaber. And so he fights the shock trooper or whatever, the riot trooper, and he loses. Again, he loses another fight. So he's not super strong right now. Like he just isn't. But then of course in the end, Poe is, this is establishing him as a phenomenal fighter pilot, much like they did in the film, which was quite good. So he kind of saves their butts from being taken by the Empire in this particular part. And so then we get into the next one where, in part 19, where Rey is abducted essentially by Darth Iron. I changed some things here. I changed the dialogue a lot. I didn't like him putting his lightsaber to her neck. I took that out. He doesn't need to do that. He's intimidating enough, and he's powerful enough. He doesn't need to go out of his way to try and seem more, he can just, if he wants to, like he did, he can just force knock her out. What does he need to be? You know what I mean? So there's no point. He says he's toying with her. Then she resists his mind reading a little bit, and he says, "You're resisting. I'm impressed." And that's again a callback to he's the grandson of Darth Vader, and so has the same genetics, and so he talks similarly. So instead of saying impressive, most impressive, he says, "Oh, I'm impressed." So again, that was just kind of just sort of harken back. Takes her. Finn is obviously upset that she's gone. He's starting to care about her. Leia shows up, right, and so now they're saved essentially from being taken and stuff like that. The Empire is gone. Leia establishes that she went through the communication logs and found out that Pride was an infiltrator for all that time, and that's what caused a lot of the problems. And then Han tells her that Rey was just taken. He doesn't necessarily know that she was taken by Ben, but he knows she was taken. And then they go back to Dakar, and Finn and Poe meet for the first time, sort of bromancing, and then Leia has this moment with Finn where you knew my brother, and that's really neat. And so there's that connection with Finn and this family, and it's the Skywalker saga, so you kind of need that. Oh, and they talk about how they're gonna try and find the Snoke person, and that there's the secret base on Canto Bight. 3PO says it's abandoned, but Han doesn't believe it. So again, we're establishing sort of the finale setting, and just establishing the relationships and stuff with the rebellion or the resistance and who's what. And so again, a necessary scene after Rey's taken to have that discussion. And then in part 20, we have the interrogation scene. I switched it up because so a well-trained Rey, not a master, but a well-trained Rey now attempts to use a Jedi mind trick, and it fails. Then we cut back to now Darth Iron is in the room with her. He knows that she's been getting some training from Luke. She tells him to take his helmet off so she can see who he really is. And because she knows that this is her brother from her vision and then just her feelings before that. He takes the helmet off, and now we realize that Ben is actually blind. And so there's a reason he wears the helmet, right? I thought one of the things that was really weird about, again, just dovetailing off what I said before about how they didn't really establish why he was so into Vader in The Force Awakens. They also didn't establish why he was wearing a helmet and stuff other than just, he's into Vader. I wanted there to be an actual, tangible reason. We don't reveal in this movie why he's blind, because that's something I wanted to save for later. But he is blind, and so the helmet helps him see, right? Otherwise, he has to use the Force entirely to see, which he's also capable of doing. So he's interrogating her. He's trying to find out where Luke Skywalker is. He's working on her. He finally does find out that he's on Ahch-To, and then he accuses him of maybe hiding from him, and why would he be doing that? Meanwhile, what he doesn't realize is that Luke's been looking for him this entire time, and he's only on Ahch-To because he's trying to find answers. They have another little go. He's trying to read further into her feelings and mind, and then she actually does block him, which is, I guess it's still it is still a little bit far-fetched, I guess. But I think the reason I kept that in is because I felt like she's been through some training now, and I do want her to be very strong in the Force. That doesn't mean she's perfect. That doesn't mean she's not going to make mistakes. But in this particular case, she was able to block him after he did enter her mind to find out where Luke was. So it's not as if she just was able to outright. There was other things that took place as well. And then after he leaves, she tries the Jedi mind trick 2 more times. And the 3rd time is successful. So she attempts it 3 times, and then the 3rd time she is successful. And again, this is a trained Jedi. She's not a master, but she has gone through very rigorous training for several weeks, like I said. So these abilities are not totally out of the realm of possibility, although she is clearly still very strong. Then we get into Luke's vision. He finally breaks through and sees where Ben is. On Canto Bight. He sees the secret underground base underneath the casino, and he sees Ben, and he sees a glimpse into a possible Ben, killing Han. Gets in his TIE fighter with R2, makes his way down there, and then I show Darth Iron arriving on Canto Bight. He talks to Hux. Where's the girl? We couldn't find her on the ship. So then he says, well, she obviously must have gotten here on my command ship, essentially, or she's here. Then, of course, we have Han and Chewie and Finn running around. Rey bumps into them. She reveals that she did sneak onto his command ship. He finds the Falcon, but he tells the police to leave it there and to let them take it away, because again the tracker is still on there, so there's no reason for him to fuss over that. And then Finn and Rey have a moment where, you know, she reveals that Darth Iron is in fact Ben Solo. They hug it out, and they're just becoming closer as a couple, or as friends, whatever you want to say. And she warns her dad about it, and so now Han realizes that the person that took her from Maz's castle is his son. Finn and Rey go on a little thing to open up the blast doors, and they get that done so that Han and Chewie can get into the main infrastructure of the underground base and attempt to blow it up, put the charges on it. And so now we have the Han death scene, and so much of what I did was to build up to this, and unfortunately the copyright stuff was really tough with this one, so I did have to do some commentary during it. I took out some of Kylo Ren's dialogue from there that was like, I don't know if I can handle this, and I don't know. I felt like that scene made him look really weak, and, you know, in my version he's not conflicted. He knows exactly what he's doing. He is an evil villain, and he has no interest in getting to know his father. He's not in any way, shape, or form confused about what's going on. He knows exactly what he's there to do and wants to do. Anything that will, you know, embed him further in the dark side, he's about. So no, I took away all that dialogue, and then of course, when Rey reacts so emotionally from witnessing it, you know, in TFA she knew Han for like a day, so her reaction felt way over the top. That's not to say she wouldn't be upset, but it just felt like, whoa. Whereas in this case, her reaction is very fitting, because she's just gotten to know her father. She's known him for about a month or so, and now all of a sudden he's gone. And so all those years, and so she's very upset. And then Finn's reaction also makes more sense too, because he's connected to Rey in a different way now and knows this family, and so he's fairly emotional as well. But that was the payoff. And that's what I think the TFA lacked. That emotional response from her didn't have anything behind it. So you, as the viewer, it didn't invoke anything in you. Whereas in my version, you know, you get emotional about it because of the fact that, again, this is her father that she's just now getting to know and has had intimate conversations and cute and nice moments with. And he's already gone. And so now we have the big climactic lightsaber duel between Darth Iron and Luke, or Ben and Luke. Luke obviously doesn't get there in time. Han dies. Just to sort of start this idea that I was mentioning earlier about bringing in elements from all 9 films and sort of bringing it to this final climax. I used a scene from Naboo because it kind of looks a little bit like Canto Bight, and I adjusted the lighting and put some yellow streetlights and stuff like that to bring it together. And then have the battle droids that have been reactivated, and actually even in canon, there are battle droids still around. They've just been deactivated. So it's a very brief moment. There's going to be much more of them in 8 and 9. But again, I wanted to just establish, like, the Empire just is gathering resource after resource after resource behind the scenes, and culminating in this takeover. And so the droids are yet another resource that they're going to have going forward. And it's meant to also create tension for the audience, in that, like, this is not a joke. Like, these guys have a lot at their disposal. And so what possibly is the New Republic or the Resistance going to do at this point? Like, these guys are everywhere. To make this scene work, I kind of had to do it with a lot of darkness. There's some really great fan films that are in the description, and then there's some video game footage as well. And then I used the lighting, and I did it, you know, the old school shot of the faces with the different colored lights going across them that Lucas incorporated also into the prequels. I believe it was the Count Dooku fight, and I just thought that was kind of a nice touch. Luke shows his dominance. He's the old master. You're not going to do anything to me, buddy. He ends the fight when he realizes he's not going to turn Ben, but instead of killing Ben, he stabs him in both shoulders and just kind of puts him down. And that was from the fan film. They did a really nice job. I had to add some stuff in there. Kylo didn't have the cross beam thing on his lightsaber in that original fan film. Then I show Finn, Rey, and Chewie on the Falcon. They're leaving. Rey and Chewie have this kind of moment. It's like, we're a team now. And of course they were allowed to leave because the tracker's on there. And then I liked that little touch with Ben walking through with his Luke with his glowing lightsaber after Ben turns his off, and they're having this conversation. And then Ben out of nowhere, but again, ultimately Luke does beat him in the fight. And then the last part, when they land, they get back on Dakar, and Leia and Rey have this moment. And I remember watching the film and again saying to myself, like, why is it so emotional between her and Leia? Like, she's a nobody. And I thought to myself, this only makes sense if they're related. Like, how are they not related? How did this scene get shot and people didn't say, wow, this really looks like a mother-daughter scene? Rey sees her mother for the first time after witnessing the death of her father. And Leia is being strong in this scene, and she's not uber emotional. She's trying to be strong for her daughter, and Rey is the one that has the big emotional moment here. And so Rey has this big emotional moment because, she's lost her father that she just started getting to know, but she still has her mother. And then I wanted to have BB9 tell C-3PO to sort of start their relationship off, right? Because they're going to have a relationship going forward in these films. And then there's just the grieving, right? Like, Chewie's grieving, Leia's grieving. It's just it's a tough time for all of them. So then in this part, we see Darth Iron walking with Hux. And Hux, we're honored by your presence. And then, again, very Vader-ish, but a little different. Instead of saying dispense with the pleasantries, he says no need for the rhetoric. But again, it gives you that kind of Vader feel without being exactly like Vader. And, he is his own character. This is also the first time you see him giving orders to Hux. He tells Hux to take what resources he has and try and establish the Coruscant system, try to take it out before the New Republic can get organized again and form a resistance. Because again, remember, each of the galactic counselors from each of these systems died. So it's very discombobulated and disorganized right now. And so we're still establishing how this revived empire took over. We're still doing that. This is yet another scene where I'm doing that. And he says move quickly because we don't want them to reorganize. He's got the shoulder plates. Those are medical apparatus that's healing him from the lightsaber pokes that he took from Luke. I just thought that was kind of a cool touch. And that he's going to go and deal with the assignment Hux was supposed to do, which is get this girl and or Luke, which was originally Hux. Hux was supposed to do that. He has this talk with the Supreme Leader, and the Supreme Leader's not happy, and Darth Iron is convincing him that it's okay, I've got everything under control, and the Supreme Leader's saying, okay, well, we'll see what happens. So then we see Rey go back to Ahch-To. Luke is already back there, obviously because she went to Dakar for a certain amount of time. He's distraught. He reveals that he was too late, that he fought Ben and couldn't turn him good. He was late for Han's being there, and so now the roles have kind of reversed, whereas he's feeling really depressed. Rey now is sort of motivated, and this is where I finally establish Rey's motivation. It's towards the end of this film, and again, it needed to happen this way. She needed to be confused. There wasn't enough about her and what had gone on to really motivate her, right? Like, I mean, she's just a scavenger. Okay, she's motivated by the fact that she's now knows who her family is, but to be a Jedi, what's the motivation for her? And Han's death was the motivation. And so now the roles have reversed, and now she's trying to encourage Luke to stay with it and to keep going and to not let that, bring him down to where he's no longer worthy to sort of train her or to, and then there's the emotional moment with him and Chewie. They are on screen for the first time together. So then she encourages Luke and tells him, no, I need you to complete my training. He says, okay, I've got another lesson for you. We're gonna lightsaber duel with blind, because Ben is blind, and he relies entirely on the Force when he doesn't have his helmet on. Now I used the footage from The Rise of Skywalker that was originally her and Leia, or excuse me, Luke and Leia, and she does win the duel. Now, in my view, it's not necessarily her overpowering Luke or anything like that. Luke isn't going to beat her down. Like, it's just not going to happen. So, but you could argue that maybe she does beat him. You know what? Whatever you guys think, I'm interested to hear what you think in the comment section. Maybe it's a little too much, right? It's a little too powerful. But again, she is supposed to be very powerful, flawed, but very powerful. Then they have this talk where she reveals that, you know, the death of Han is basically her motivation. Something awoke inside of her, and so now she sees that she needs to be a key piece in this cog to stop Ben from doing things like that anymore. And then we have the caretaker village scene, which I really liked in the movie for the most part. Some of the dialogue I wasn't a huge fan of, but I still thought it should have been in there. This is where we get a little bit of her emotion and her anger again, which she you know, I want to leave the potential open that she could fall to the dark side. I don't want her to be presented as totally perfect and unable to do that. So they have this little scene, and then she you know, gets mad at Luke and says, I'll never stop fighting for the innocent. And the scene sort of ends there, and again establishes that she's, you know, she's still emotional, she's still imperfect, she's well trained, and she's powerful, but she's reactionary, and that's not a good thing. So that's basically what we're looking at there, which then brings us to 25, and this is sort of the climax of the entire movie. I kind of felt like there was two climaxes. I kind of felt like the Luke-Ben lightsaber duel was a climax, or sort of like a mini climax, and then that builds into this really big climax. Okay, well, first of all, one of the things I didn't mind with Last Jedi was the Porgs, because I know a lot of people are like, stupid Porgs, it's a money grab, and it is, but so is Baby Yoda, right? I mean, they made them look a certain way so that they were cute, and I like their little interactions with Chewie. I think it's funny, you know, he cooks one up to eat it, and then they're in the Falcon and getting on his nerves and stuff. I think that's fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, and it's a kid thing. So now Luke says to Rey, you know, he wakes her up and says, oh, you know, they found the tracker. We got to get the Falcon ready and get out of here. And so she goes and fixes something, and then comes back in, and they can hear TIE fighters, but they can't see them. As soon as they take off, they're blasted by a Star Destroyer. Blast. I don't know if you noticed the sound. It was not a TIE fighter. This is where the Empire, this is where things really get emotional about just how bad things have gotten. And so the Falcon is blown out of the water. They swim away. It's now done. It's in the bottom of the ocean on Octu. Luke sees that happen, and then Luke uses the most force power he's ever used in any case ever. And he actually pulls the Star Destroyer out of the sky. It crashes into the ocean, leaving him extremely weakened. But in his mind, he was saving Chewie and Rey, because, I mean, at the end of the day, they would definitely either be taken or destroyed or what have you. So he saves them, but then he is taken. And again, it's an old Republic ship, because again, I'm establishing they're gathering resources. This is yet another example where this revived Empire they've gotten other ships as well, older ships, and they're just merging everything together. And then I introduced this new technology, this force blocking technology. So Luke is pulled into the ship using the technology, and then when he's in the ship, he's encased in it. And it's meant to make you think like, oh, so this is something where he can't like use the force to get out of there or whatever. Then we head back down, and this crashed Star Destroyer has created these massive waves. And so now, you know, this is of course the Rise of Skywalker, where it's the Death Star, which makes absolutely no sense because it was blown to smithereens if you've ever watched the Return of the Jedi or A New Hope. But anyway, so we have these massive waves because this massive, you know, Star Destroyers, you know, are huge, massive. They're almost like little cities, right, in the sky. So that creates these huge waves, and we see Rey goes after it. She's looking for answers. She now that she's motivated and she wants to know what the heck is going on. So we see her climbing around. She eventually reaches the computer terminal and sees something on it. And then all of a sudden we see Darth Iron, or Ben, has followed over there, senses she's there. He flies over there. So they're on this ship that's in the middle of sinking. And it turns out what she saw was a list of other resources that the Empire has gathered, and that it seems to establish, or at least Ben says it establishes, that they are reborn, and there's nothing that you're going to be able to do to stop us. So you might as well join me, which is of course his agenda. He wants her because that's what the fake Vader ghost that the new Emperor essentially is pushing on him told him he needs to do, is bring her into the fold. She refuses. They have this talk about, the fact that he killed their dad and how evil he is. They have a lightsaber duel on this sinking Star Destroyer, not the Death Star. And in the end, she shows a lot of good things, force powers, blah, 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 blah. But she can't handle him, and she can't even handle him without his mask on. Like, there's no way. But at the end of the duel, it looks as though he's going to take her out, and then he stops himself and says, "Run." So you, as the viewer, can take that for what you want. I don't want to reveal too much of why that's done, because it ties into 8 and how he and her interact in 8. So I don't really want to say exactly why I did that, but that's what happens. He lets her go. He even lets her take his TIE fighter, and that's it. And so basically, the Empire takes over. Rey is nowhere near ready to handle Darth Iron, and Luke has been taken. So you're at the point now where basically this is worse than Empire. Like the Empire Strikes Back ending. Like, this is devastation ending. Where do you go from here? It's meant to feel hopeless. I did that on purpose. It's meant to feel like there's what are these guys going to do? And then in basically the epilogue, part 26, we see Chewie and Rey leave. They're going to go join their people, join her mother, and so Ben is left on Ahch-To now, alone essentially, or for now anyway. He's obviously going to get picked up and whatever, but he's alone, and he's looking around at stuff, and he finds the Jedi texts. And so as a viewer, you're now left with the impression that he now has those. So even the texts are in the hands of the enemy. Everything is gone. Like, there's just nothing. He goes through Luke's stuff. He gets the Kyber crystal from what we assume is Darth Vader's lightsaber, but we don't know for sure. He's looking through the books. He gets that. He gets picked up. The TIE fighters blow up the tree. They shoot the temple room or whatever that was on top of the cliffs of Ahch-To. They destroy all that stuff. And this is something that, again, is going to build into 8 and what we do with the temples and Jedi stuff in that. And so they've just destroyed everything on Ahch-To as far as they know. Then I show the scene from Mando with the old guys with another remnant pocket somewhere in the galaxy, and he says, "Oh, there's a revived empire." And this is just another one of those little scenes that I put in throughout that kind of established the greater universe. It's bigger than just the family. I think in the sequel trilogy they focused way too much on just only the areas that were impacting the main characters, and they didn't build a bigger picture. So again, now we're starting to see all these little pockets are hearing that the Empire is reestablishing itself, and they're getting excited. And so that's built, again, more resources, more things coming together, more building. And then he showed Leia, and ships are being shot down. So this war is ongoing. This is just another place somewhere where they're fighting and they're failing. And then I cut to Hux, and he's on a winter planet. Which planet is it? Oh, well, we're going to find out. And he's addressing now this is the final sort of established, the Empire is now revived. And we are no longer remnants, we are reunited. And so this was kind of the big finale of, this is why I called it this. It was not called this because Han, Luke, and Leia have a scene together. Okay, they were not the ones that were reuniting, really. It was all these groups and all these things throughout the galaxy that were Empire sympathizing have all come together now, and they are reunited. And so I thought that was kind of a nice touch. I showed, they have droids. lots of military, and then we cut to Luke, and Luke is inside of this sort of force blocking prison. And so this is the new technology that's been developed by this new empire, that they have this ability to, if they can get a force user, they can house them, and the force user can't do anything. They can't get out. So again, even worse, the worst case scenario, like they don't have Luke anymore. They're losing battles left, right, and center. It's just really dire at the end of this movie. There's not, then we zoom out from where Luke is, and we find out that he's inside of this planet that's under construction, some sort of empire base that they're building. And again, so just more and more and more of a bad ending for our heroes. Like this is the worst case scenario. Like the empire is fully back basically. And then the final shots of all the sort of main characters that are left to fight this battle, or available to fight this battle, and then of course BB9 kind of rolling in at the end, and they're just sort of looking out into the galaxy, into the stars, and it's that's basically it. If you've sat through this whole thing, you've sat through a long talk, but I just wanted to sort of give you guys the background as to why I did what I did, and what the point of all of it was, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section, what you think about this part 7, this episode 7, and if you think it's better than The Force Awakens, if you think it establishes more things, and if you think it makes more sense. And then if there are plot holes, I'd love to hear what they are. I'm sure there are some. Almost every movie has some. I really tried to avoid that, and then I did also try to leave not just questions for the sake of it, but good questions going forward into the next movie. Like, what's going to happen with Finn, and how's he going to train, and there's no, what are they going to do? So that's basically it, guys. So thank you very much for listening, and let me know what you think, and if what I'm saying makes sense, and any sort of things you guys think maybe could have been better or done differently in your own mind. I'm also super interested in that as well. Have a good day.